With imposter syndrome, you know intellectually that you're capable and you're competent and you can do stuff. Yet at the same time, internally, you're feeling like you're not quite good enough and you're worried that people are going to find you out. So it's that internal fight. And it doesn't show up everywhere. So if you just had low confidence, it would show up in all areas of your life. With imposter syndrome, it might be just one thing, like you do a whole bunch of different tasks in your working day, but there's just one that always seems to trip you up and stress you out. That's the one that's pointing that it might be likely imposter syndrome. So it's not a lack of confidence. Some people think it's a lack of confidence. It's not. It's not a personality flaw. Some people think it's related to gender. Women get it more than men. Actually, the proof is no, men and women get it equally. Just women are more free to talk about it than men are.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Tara Halliday. Tara is a specialist in imposter syndrome. And when I say specialist, she's written 2 books on the subject. One was finalist at the British Book Awards. And she also runs a program, which I'm going to get the word right here, Tara, otherwise you pick me up, dispels, gets rid of, cures, sorts, I'll say sorts and you can put the right word in, imposter syndrome forever. So, I mean, this is your bag. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Delighted
What was-
to be read.
What was the right word I should be using?
I don't know. I tossed this about several times. Eliminates, I think, is the one. It's got a kind of finality to it.
It's the finality piece that we're saying in that. So,
yeah.
So cool. I am speaking to the right person about this, and I've heard you speak on a podcast around this, which is why I wanted to come and share some of this stuff with us, because a lot of salespeople will have some kind of imposter syndrome, or no, let me rephrase that. A lot of people will say that they have, but it might not actually be that. It might be something else.
Mm-hmm.
So can we kick off with getting the definition of what is imposter syndrome?
Yes, great start. So imposter syndrome is the secret feeling of being a fraud when you're not a fraud. It's the self-doubt and the fear of being found out. And it affects 70% of high achievers. So 70% of your listeners are likely going to say, gee, this sounds like me.
Okay, there's a couple of bits in that definition we need to pick apart, isn't it? Secret feeling, of a fraud when you're not. So this secret bit, I think, is probably important because you did emphasize that.
The secret, well, you mentioned a lot more people are talking about imposter syndrome now, but a lot of people still aren't because it's 70%. So we're just seeing those conversations. People they get confused with imposter syndrome. They've got all this feeling, this self-doubt, and we'll talk about the symptoms in a moment. But it's confusing. They don't know why it's there. They don't know what to do about it. And if the brain doesn't see, is looking for pain and it doesn't find us the answer, it must be me. So then people think that there's something wrong with them, that it's a flaw, that they're broken, it's personality, they don't fit, they don't belong, all of these things. And that's why they keep it a secret, because they think they look around, everyone else seems to be doing so great. Nobody else seems to be struggling with this internal fight. And so they think it must be something wrong with me. And they feel ashamed and they're embarrassed and they won't talk about it.
These are strong words.
Yeah.
No, flawed, broken. There's something wrong with me. I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed. I mean, this is heavy stuff, yeah?
It has such a big impact. It's been linked to burnout, people quitting, people slowing down their careers. It's not something, light and fluffy. It has real impact.
So those strong words are when people are feeling that. So some people might say, "Oh, I've got imposter syndrome, but I've never really felt that."
Mm.
Could that be something different then? Could that be you just lacking a bit of confidence in something? It's not a full-on imposter syndrome because this stuff almost sounds crippling to some degree.
It is. It is. So let me see. How would you separate it out? With imposter syndrome, you know intellectually that you're capable and you're competent and you can do stuff. Yet at the same time, internally, you're feeling like you're not quite good enough and you're worried that people are going to find you out. So it's that internal fight. And it doesn't show up everywhere. So if you just had low confidence, it would show up in all areas of your life. With imposter syndrome, it might be just one thing, like you do a whole bunch of different tasks in your working day, but there's just one that always seems to trip you up and stress you out. And that's the one that's pointing that it might be likely imposter syndrome. So it's not a lack of confidence. Some people think it's a lack of confidence. It's not. It's not a personality flaw. Some people think it's related to gender. Women get it more than men. Actually, the proof is no, men and women get it equally. Just women are more free to talk about it than men are.
Yeah, it's interesting. So can you have it in varied habit? Am I using it? You will pick. I know you'll pick me if I use the wrong language. And this is the point. It's like
Yeah.
I want people to kind of understand this better. So I'll go with the question. Can you sort of have it in varying degrees? Can you sort of have a little bit of it? You know,
Yes.
so if I give you an example, it might be easier. So, my third book, you'd have thought by then I'm quite comfortable writing books. I think I experienced this at one stage where I wasn't lacking confidence. I'd be standing on stage talking to people about sales stuff. What I do,
Yes.
get paid for it. I'm around the world. Awesome. Put it into some words and put it out so people can read it. They don't want to listen to me. And I just kind of hit a block. I stopped writing. I got all kind of can't do this, and then kind of got back on the horse and finished it. But that period of about a couple of months,
Yeah.
I would have labelled it imposter syndrome. I don't know if I would have done that right, but it certainly helped me.
Yeah. Yeah. There's two things. Firstly, yes, there's degrees to which you can have it.
Okay, good. And you could have it.
So I've got a quiz. You do the quiz, you get a score. If you score over 50, that's imposter syndrome having an impact. If over 62, you really need to do something about it because it's having a stronger impact. But also, it can seem to come and go. So it might have these waves. So you felt it at one particular point when you were writing your book, and then it seemed to dissipate. Now, in the future, something else might come up and trigger it. So that's how people notice this repeating pattern coming time and time again. And depending on who you are and what it is that triggers you, is how frequently and how disturbing each episode is.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons that I thought it'd be useful to speak to you, many reasons, but one is that I talk to a lot of salespeople about putting stuff out on LinkedIn or on social media to elevate their profile, enhance their reputation. I don't use the word personal branding for sales now because people hate it. But we want to get good reputations so people can talk to us.
Yeah.
And with people who are brilliant at what they do, and they know so much stuff about their speciality, about their customers' problems. I mean, they're in such a good position to do this. But they seem to be hit with this, I know, but I can't put that out there.
Yes.
Would that be potentially imposter syndrome?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very, very. Okay.
Yeah. Because there's something about that visibility that it feels exposed more so than being in a room with people because you can't get people's feedback, face-to-face feedback and read the room because you can't see the room, right? I had a client recently who had exactly this problem and she would procrastinate. She just, oh, no, I won't. And then when she put things out, she'd so heavily edited them that they were kind of flat and bland because they wouldn't draw any criticism, things like that. And she actually just yesterday, she sent me an email saying how not only was she just doing things and not just posts, she was doing videos, which was, even a higher level,
In there.
challenge for her because she hated it. But she said, now I'll just put a post out. Now I'll put videos out. yesterday she sent me a copy of her post and said, I actually put some of my poetry out there. And
Wow.
if you think of poets and artists, a lot of that barrier to putting things out there is the more personal stuff like poetry. So yeah, it becomes effortless when you get rid of the block, and the block in this case is imposter syndrome.
Yeah, because I mean, certainly in that case, isn't it? So social media in particular, yeah, you can be so bland. So normal, might as well get AI to write it. Whenever we want your opinion, your take on it, something you've seen customers deal with it that you've helped them with. We want that story element. That's what's going to make it interesting. But it does need a bit of you in there. And that's where you think, yeah, but I'm not really that good. Hang on a minute. All those customers you've helped, all the sales you've made, you are good.
And that is actually a really good point, Fred, because it's not a lack of success, right? It's not, and you can get people to say, well, yes, I've done that. But that success doesn't prove to the person that they're quite good enough. And I'll give you an example. I had a client, I'll call him Brian. It's not Brian, obviously. And he worked for a global, really big global company, and he was number 2 salesperson in the world. So number 1 in his country, number 1 in his region, number 2 in the world. And all of these imposter syndrome feelings were right there. He didn't feel he was quite good enough. He felt that, yeah, okay, I've got all these awards and holidays and, everything's behind me, but I feel like everything can just fall apart any minute. If everything might just, maybe it was just luck. Maybe it was just good timing. Maybe I've just happened to be in the right place. It's that overthinking. This is the thinking, the thought part of it. It's the self-doubt, the overthinking, maybe I'm not quite as good. And it had a big impact on him. So it meant his whole work was more stressful. And we'll go into why.
Yeah. I hope I'm not going to take us too off track on this, but is there an opposite of imposter syndrome? Is it hubris or something like that? It's like, it was, I mean, not for Brian, but there are salespeople that have been bloody lucky, who've got all these awards and they've got a load of things, and it's like, and I'm excellent. I'm superb at my job. It's like, no, you literally are lucky. Don't big yourself up too much because you're not all it. Is there like the opposite? Is it hubris? Have I got the right word? Or?
So there is something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And I don't know if you've come across that. And that's where people think they're better than they actually are. If you look at people on the learning cycle and experience cycle, that tends to affect people who are brand new, who've no idea of the scale of the problem. Yeah, I can do that. That looks easy. Of course I can do it. And I have no experience. And that's what the Dunning-Kruger effect really is. Imposter syndrome is when you've got the experience, you've got the competence, you've got the success, and you still don't feel quite good enough, and you're still doubting yourself or criticizing yourself or having some reactions.
Yeah. Dunning-Kruger. I think I might have been a poster child for them at some stage. It's competence and confidence, isn't it?
Exactly.
But then the more you know, the more you realise you don't know, and actually you can end up in a bit of a kind of that trough, can't you?
Well, that's it. So
that's a different podcast. The Dunning-Kruger. We could all fess up to that. But okay, so we're getting an idea of what imposter syndrome is. So it's you are good and capable and confident, but inside you have these thoughts, these feelings that you're not. In simplest terms, make sure I've got that bit right. Okay. Are there any myths? Are there any things around imposter syndrome that we just ought to be aware of that might just help us as we sort of start to check whether this is something that's affecting us or not?
Yeah. So there's a lot of myths floating around on the internet about what imposter syndrome is and what you can do about it, what you can't. Yeah. Probably one of the biggest things is that people are starting to realize that it affects lots and lots of people. So some of the influencers out there saying, well, just pull your socks up. Everyone's got it, tough. It's like, what?
Helpful.
No. It's like, to me, it's like imposter syndrome, like having a nail in your shoe that you can't see. You don't know it's there. You don't know what it is, but it's slowing you down, it's painful, it's distracting, and you really don't want to walk, but it's saying, you want to get on, but you don't. And so these people are saying, well, just put up with it because, that's human. I think, no, we can just pull the nail out. Or some people are saying, oh, well, this is your superpower. This means you care. This means you're determined. Means, yeah. And it's like, no, you've got a nail in your shoe. Just take the nail out. So yeah,
I can picture people saying that stuff. But it's wrapped up in so many different ways, isn't it? Yeah. Put your big girl, your big boy pants on and man up. I mean, but sexist, and that and superpower. No, but I love it. I love the way you've reframed that. There's an nail issue, take a nail out. It's far easier in the long run. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a solution, and I think this is it. There's an idea that there's not a solution, and if we go down to the root cause of imposter syndrome, we can get onto that. But when it was first identified, not imposter syndrome, but the root cause, which is back in the 1950s by one of the granddaddies of personal psychology, and at that time, he called it the root cause of all human suffering. Not imposter syndrome, the root cause. Conditional worth it's called, right? So it's the root cause of all human suffering. And by the way, there's nothing we can do about it because it's a belief, it's a perspective that's rooted deeply in the brain. And when you get to become an adult, we can't change the brain. We can't develop new neurons. Now, neuroscience now knows that we can make this change. If we do very specific things, a very systematic process in a particular way, we can actually change even this deep level of internal programming and once it's gone, it's gone. So it's not like you have to stand in the mirror every morning and say, I am good enough. You literally forget to doubt yourself. It's effortless confidence. So, things that, like that person about the social media, right? She just gets on and does it. She doesn't have to fight with herself to get these posts and videos out there. She just gets on and does them, and and I dare I say enjoys them.
What? Aristotle.
Right.
Is this to do with neuroplasticity?
It is
Or am I
change.
now?
It is. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
It is neuroplasticity.
I'm showing off only because I said something the other day about those dendron and neuron thingies.
Oh, yes.
And somebody said, do you mean neuroplasticity, Fred?
Yes.
I'm proving that I'm constantly learning. I said, I heard that.
Yeah. And neuroplasticity is just that. It's
the neural thingies
of the brain for us to change, right? When previously thought we fix it, you have to set up the right conditions. That's why we still have the phrase, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's the old 1950s thinking. 2025 and beyond, we know we can change it if we put the right framework around it, put the right process together.
And we know we can because it's happened. You do it. That's your job. You had a number of success stories, but even the physiological stuff that's happening. Again, if I understand well, fMRI means we can see into the brain better than we ever could. We couldn't do that in the 50s. But now you can. You can see those changes actually happening.
Exactly. Yeah. And experiments they've done with rats and people and learning and the learning process and what we can change and how we can change it. That is the basis, like the scientific basis behind it. And I don't know how deeply you want to go into the science of this, because it's pretty deep, but it's creating the right neurochemical environment that allows certain parts of the brain to change. And then we overlay or replace the negative emotional charge with positive emotional charge at the unconscious level.
I could go really deep on this. However, I do have an eye on the clock, and
that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
But the symptoms will be good as to whether we are, again, suffering is a fair word, I think.
Suffering's a great word for it.
Actually, no, I'm going to use that because I did. I suffered.
Isn't it? Yeah.
to see if we are, because then the great thing is you actually said, well, not like, who's the psychologist, by the way? Who's the person who said all of this stuff? Oh, by the way, bad luck, can't do anything about it, mate.
Carl Rogers, Dr. Carl Rogers, one of the greats in personal psychology in the 1950s. Yeah. And he found it. So we get to the symptoms then. You're absolutely right. So if you imagine, do you ask yourself, who am I to be doing this? Am I good enough? Are people going to find me out? Did I just get lucky? You find yourself self-criticism. So then imposter syndrome thoughts. This triggers a physiological response. So it triggers the fight, flight, and freeze responses, which have devastating effects on your performance, your focus, your energy, and your ability to interact reasonably with other people around you. It creates poor sleep, tension, anxiety, and overwhelm. So that's kind of like the physiological response. And then to try and shift that physiological response, we develop these automatic behaviors like perfectionism, procrastinating, over-preparing. So do you compare yourself to others? Do you hide your opinions sometimes? Do you avoid some roles, take a sideways new job rather than a promotion? Feel like if you just got one more qualification, that would finally prove, or one more promotion, it would prove that you're good enough, or, just if you beat your goals and beat everyone around you, all of those things. So they're the kind of the behavior symptoms. So we've got these thoughts, physiological response, and then the behavior. So it's this cycle of symptoms going round and round. So what most people do is they try and sort out the symptoms. So they try and, good habits for the behaviors. Hard work, right? Try to outthink themselves in the thoughts. Yeah. The thing that is useful, actually, and I know we'll get to tips at the end, but one of the things that is really helpful is to get yourself out of the fight, flight, and freeze response very quickly. If you like, I've got a PDF that describes that, actually, the power reset, I call it up. Put it at the end.
Let's pop that to show notes. That would be really useful. And in the PDF, do you go over those symptoms as well? Okay.
Go over all of the steps to get yourself out of the fight, flight, and freeze really quickly, and that just lowers your stress level. It makes you less triggered, and that really helps.
So you can function, or you can move on, and then you can start to get into really fixing the thing properly. Is it like putting almost like a space saver tire on a car? So it's going to get you home, but then you need to be going in and go, right, let's put your proper tire on. So you're not going to drive around with that forever.
Right. I like that, because we've put the nail in the tire, and now we've got the temporary tire on. Yeah, that's one of the temporary tires. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Although let me just pick on what you said, but this is also a cycle. So the thoughts triggers behaviors will then go into more thoughts, which is triggering more, which might be making the behaviors more extreme. So we're going in a bit of a...
Well, the bit is the self-judgment. We do these behaviors. It's like, why am I procrastinating again? I know this, I can do this. Why? And people think it's them. They beat themselves up, and that feeds into the thinking. So yeah, it's really it can be a downward spiral. And this is why it can be linked to burnout, or people just quitting their career. Really talented people thinking that they're not good enough when actually they are good enough. They've just got imposter syndrome.
Throw the car away.
Exactly, throw the car away. Love it. Yeah.
Tire. Yeah. Oh, cool. So the symptoms then. So you said, the root cause, you said we'd go into that a little bit deeper. We kind of dig down, because that's going to help us understand this stuff.
Yeah. So the root cause of it, as I said, Carl Rogers identified it back in the 1950s. Something he calls conditional worth. That is, our worth as a person depends on what we do. We do something good, we are good. We hit our sales target, we're good. We don't hit our sales target, we're awful. It's got that. It's linking together our worth as a person and our actions. And one of the reasons it's confusing is people don't know where it came from. Actually, turns out it's one of the things that most people experience when they're around about 2 years old. and their brain is starting to change, and they're starting to identify the sense of self, who I am. I'm different from everything else around me. But what they don't get, vast majority of people don't get, is somebody teaching them to separate their worth from their actions. So, and people do it with their dog as well. Bad dog, when the dog's done something bad, but they say bad dog, bad girl, bad boy, that kind of thing. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and it's so subtle. And when you start noticing it, you'll see it everywhere in society. This labeling of people as good or bad, worthy or not worthy, depending on their actions. And as a social species, right, to be rejected and to be chucked out of the group is a death sentence, just on a really primal level, caveman things, death sentence. And that's why it triggers our fight, flight, and freeze response. So even though it's so-and-so said something in the meeting, right? It's not a tiger running at us. It still triggers the same unconscious, this was going to kill me response. And that is why you talked about the strong language I was using. This is why it's such strong language, because it's tapping into that primal, I'm going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. So as a social species, back in the day, you were ostracized from the tribe and you could not survive. You wouldn't be able to hunt for yourself, shelter, all that sort of stuff. So
That's it.
so
Yeah.
hence strong language. Okay. Yeah. Big deep. I mean, it's an old ancient brain doing this stuff.
Yeah, it is. So and that's why people struggle to solve the problem when they're just looking at the symptoms, because the root cause is this deep brain programming that we used to think we couldn't change, and now we can.
Because we understand the brain better.
Because we understand, and because they've done so much work in the chemicals of the brain and how that's interacting with memory and emotions, this really deep stuff. They've understand the circumstances in which we can change that. That's what's so exciting.
No, it is. And that's why it makes sense that I said to you before we start hitting record as to we want to give, and I know tips and hints isn't the right answer, because it needs more serious work. And that's not you trying to sell the program. It's like, no, that's how it is. That's what has to happen, because it's so deep. But I think you did indicate that there are some things that we can do to sort of, limpo mode, if you like, or kind of just at least get out freeze, fight, flight, and just get into a better place to be able to make the better decisions, to then go deeper into it.
Absolutely. Well, the first one is to, if you noticing when you're in fight, flight, and freeze, and then getting yourself out quickly. And that's that PDF I mentioned, the power reset. So I'll add that in. That is just going to allow you to get a little bit calmer, which means that your coping behaviors won't be so active. So, for example, if you procrastinate, if you recognize that that's coping to stress, well, calm yourself down, go out for a walk and come back, right? Get yourself calm, and that need, if you like, that push to procrastinate will have reduced, right? It won't have gone away because you've still got the root cause, but it would at least help. So getting yourself calm is fantastic. One of the most common problems, and I know in particularly people that suffer from this in sales, is comparing, right? Because that is the setup, right? There's a leaderboard, there's getting to the top position, there's your scores. It's really, really comparison driven. What I mean by comparison in terms of imposter syndrome is you look around and everyone's so successful and you're feeling these uncomfortable feelings inside. And you're like, well, it must be me, right? So if someone does something well and you feel like it reflects on you, so you feel bad when they're doing well. So what's going on there is when you're comparing, you're looking for differences. Yeah, how are they different from me? And the brain is designed to do this, right? Because you need to be able to spot changes in your environment to protect danger, back to the primal stuff, right? But if you're comparing, you're looking for differences and then you're feeling bad about it, then that's not a healthy and a supportive place to be. And it's certainly not going to kick up your enthusiasm and your confidence. So when you notice yourself comparing, you can't stop comparing. When you notice yourself comparing, flip it, consciously say, okay, how am I like that person? What are the similarities? And the more similarities that you see with the other people, the more you'll feel like them, the more you'll feel like you belong, the more you'll feel like you are, good enough. So that is a really quick hit, temporary tire fix, but it really works really well.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I'm just thinking how many salespeople might, self-included, and could we then take that too far? Go, how am I like that? Actually, how am I better? Or would that be unhelpful?
Well, so there's I like that. There's two ways we can interpret comparing. So we can compare ourselves to people who we aspire to be like.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's great because that kicks in the enthusiasm. So there's absolutely, and then ask yourself, how am I like that person I'm aspiring to be like?
Yep.
And then you start to have a roadmap of maybe skills you want to develop or attitudes or things like that. So you can't take it too far in that. You first get yourself out of the pit so you don't feel like you're less than everyone else. And then you can use the same thing. How am I like that person? Because sometimes we can see, really impressive people and we feel like there's such a big gap that, we can never get that far. But actually, the more you feel you're like them, the more possibilities it opens that you could actually get there.
Yeah. Yeah. So look, they're 100% different to me. Brilliant. Actually, when I look at it, 50% we're similar. We do the same things. Now, those things that I admire and will help me get what I want, then I can use that as a role model,
That's it.
competence framework,
Yes.
to go, right, that's what I can do to get to that similar point in my way. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Like that.
Yeah. Can you see that that in that frame, you're not judging yourself, you're not beating yourself up. It's like, what can I do? So it's possibility, it's moving forward, it's growth, which is exciting.
No, it is. There is so much more that I know you could talk about, but I have an eye on the clock. And I think my next question will probably take us into another hours worth of discussion. And you promised us the PDF. And did you say there is a quiz as well? There's some interactive resource you've got that people can also use to get a little bit from this.
20 questions, 4 minutes, and it'll give you a percentage score. And then you can see for yourself, because people say, well, do I have imposter syndrome or not? And so that's the very first, but take the quiz and the quiz will tell you. This is the one I'll point you to is the gold standard in imposter syndrome testing. So it's a good one.
We will drop that one into the show notes as well, so people can just do that straight away if this has started to
lovely
think. And where can people find you? They want to get in touch because you're also producing a ton of stuff around this.
Yeah, interestingly, I'm mostly I'm mostly on LinkedIn. Yeah. So find me there, Tara-Halliday-PhD. And I've got a newsletter, the High Performance Executive, which I write every 2 or 3 weeks, which is very relevant for people in leadership positions and sales positions and sales leadership positions as well. I've got a book. I've got 2 books you can look at on Amazon. The most recent one is Outsmart Imposter Syndrome. I'm not really much on much of the rest of social media. You can find me, but my name's quite unusual, so you can type my name.
That's to hold the place, isn't it? So no one else can nip in and start saying bad stuff. No, we'll drop the LinkedIn link into show notes as well. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing stuff. I am sure people will be able to take something from this. And if they want to learn more, contact you. Let them know that. Let Tara know you've heard this. And thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure, Fred. It's great talking to you.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the Collaborative Selling Scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.